Our minds love order, check boxes, to-do lists that get checked off, things that get completed in a linear fashion. Our mind loves it. But the issue is that when we live a life where our mind leads the way, we're setting ourselves up for a hollow life. The short, catchy, punchy version is that I went on this journey and I stepped onto the path of my soul's purpose. I was not on that path. I was on the path of the hamster wheel that we call the matrix. From that came this massive momentum that I felt in my entire being that was overrode any mental story that I could have created. And my mind it's still very strong, but my mind was completely running my life back then.
Welcome to It's Not What You Think, the podcast that takes you on a transformative journey to rewrite your story of greatness and reawaken your soul's purpose. I'm your host, Celine DaCosta, a subconscious mind expert, master coach, and believer in the limitless power and magic that lives within all of us. My intention in this podcast is to propel you into your next level of success so that you are free to create the life that your heart most desires. Through deep, actionable insights, personal stories, and world-class guests, I'll provide you with the tools, strategies, and resources you need to unlock the fullest expression of who you're meant to be in this lifetime so that you can consciously design a reality that is beyond what you could have ever dreamed of. Join me on this journey to personal growth and evolution, and let's live our lives in accordance with our highest soul's calling. This podcast is your weekly check-in to help this path become more simple, obtainable, and fun. Thank you for tuning in today, and now let's dive in.
Hello, family, and welcome back to It's Not What You Think. Today, I want to open up about a story that I have told many, many times on many, many different mediums. But as I was reflecting today on what I wanted to share in today's episode, I realized that I haven't properly opened up about this on my own channels. And that is my couch surfing journey in 2016, which propelled what I can now call my career, my life. It was one of the biggest decisions I have made in my adult life about who I wanted to become and how I wanted to live my life. And, it's a story that in many ways has been sensationalized. It's been featured on Forbes. It's been featured on TEDx. It's been featured on many, many channels. Many people have talked about it. I've talked about it. But I find that, hindsight is always 20/20. And being 7 years away from this story and from this major event in my life, it still feels like there's things that it's teaching me and things that I wanted to share today when it comes to taking, I don't even like the word risks because it doesn't feel completely right to call it a risk because it was very calculated, but let's just say taking a leap of faith towards your soul's purpose. And that's what this episode is really about, illustrated by this specific story that I'm going to be diving deeper in. And that story is one of what I would call, when it comes to, what we can call a spiritual awakening, I don't believe and haven't personally experienced that there's just like one awakening. Because we're cyclical beings, what I have witnessed to be true is that our awakening, our expansion, evolution, it comes in waves. And what most people refer to as spiritual awakening tends to be like the first wave, which, because most times we're not expecting it, can sometimes be very violent or very shocking or really huge because we don't know what was happening. We don't know why it's happening. We don't know what's going on. Most of the time we haven't been prepared or equipped to know what is happening. And so that to me was my first wave was back in 2015 when I was 25 years old. And I had this big epiphany, which I'm not going to go into detail here because you can find it on episode 3 when I talk about my epiphany as to why I decided to leave my corporate life in New York City and couch surf the world. But what I really want to focus today is the actual journey that I took, which I don't talk as much about. I talk a lot about why I decided to do it and the reasons that led up to that decision, but not the actual journey. Also, because I'm saving some of the story for the book that is currently circulating amongst New York publishing houses. So we'll see who picks it up. But there's an entire book that is going to be published about this journey, and that decision that I made, that I was going to quit my corporate job to travel around the world, it sounds really glamorous and it sounds really sexy when I talk about it and have talked about it, but it was really difficult. It was a really difficult decision for me to let go of a life that I had so carefully curated and prepared and just organized to set it up just so I could tick off all the boxes and know that, okay, here I am in New York City. I work in a fancy job, and I'm earning this kind of money, and I live in this kind of place. I'm doing everything right, tick, 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 which is mentally very satisfying. Our minds love order, check boxes, to-do lists that get checked off, things that get completed in a linear fashion. Our mind loves it. But the issue is that when we live a life where our mind leads the way, we're setting ourselves up for a hollow life, because it's not the mind that is meant to be allowing us to have our human experience fully. It's our soul. And when we start to operate from our soul, that's when life gets blissful. That's when life gets exciting. That's when life gets really beautiful, and you're living it in alignment to love, in the field of love, in connection to God, Source, the Almighty, whatever you want to call this oneness that we've all experienced at some point. And when we are in that space of being separated from it, which is what the mind does, it creates a lot of suffering. It creates a lot of contraction. It creates a lot of illusion. It creates a lot of us feeling disconnected from ourselves on a very core level. And that is what I experienced so strongly after over a decade of immigrating to the US and trying to fit in and trying to be perfect and doing all the things that I thought I needed to do, the mental paradigms that were sold to me. And just coming to a place in my life where I had this very felt experience that if I don't change my life, I am going to die. I am going to die inside. And from that came this massive momentum that I felt in my entire being that was overrode any mental story that I could have created. And my mind it's still very strong, but my mind was completely running my life back then. And to be in a space to say, I feel that my life needs to change and there's something out there so strongly that I'm going to give up everything that I ever knew, everything that I'm used to and everything I'm comfortable in. For me to take a leap of faith into something I have no freaking idea if it's going to work out, what it's going to be, how it's going to end, how it's going to be in the middle. I don't know anything. I just know I need to do something that is not this. This being going through the robotic motions of living in mainstream society. And when I made this decision, and like I said, if you're interested in hearing more of the story, I definitely recommend you listen to episode 3, where I talk about the details of how I made that decision and how I actually made it happen. The next step of my life became, I'm going to leave New York City. I'm going to leave corporate. I'm going to leave literally all my belongings. I'm going to pack a carry-on. And I'm going to travel the world. And I'm going to circumnavigate the world. with faith that if I leave this place with a blank slate and I make a decision that I'm going to change my life, and it's going to change and it must change, then that's what's going to happen. But I am not at all prepared for what that thing's going to be, what it looks like, I just don't know. I don't know. It was the biggest fucking I don't know of my life. I don't know. Since then, this feeling of uncertainty, of the unknown, of I don't know, is a feeling that I've battled with many, many times in this different cycles of awakening, different cycles of transitioning and evolving in my being. And I wish I could sit here like telling you that I'm over it and I'm super confident in the unknown. I'm still not. But I noticed even as I'm speaking into this, the amount of fear and just terror that I felt back then at the unknown, and I compare it to the terror that I feel now, we're definitely seeing improvements, and I'm definitely getting more used to being comfortable and okay in what I don't know. And so, but back then I wasn't. I didn't have 7 years of, doing the work, cleaning up, deconditioning myself, and doing the massive amount of inner work that I've done since that day. And so I didn't understand the way that I do now, which is why it's quite lovely as well to put words to it, because it's almost like I'm looking back at that beautiful 25-year-old being, just thinking to myself, wow, lady, you were freaking courageous. You were brave for going into this thing having no freaking idea what you were getting yourself into, because it was the biggest adventure of a lifetime. And as I leapt into this big, fat unknown, I just remember this felt sense in my body, which today is something that lives with me. As long as I'm doing my practice, it's with me almost every day. Which is this, like, I just know I'm meant to do this. I know this is my path. I don't know what it looks like, but I know I'm meant to do this. And when I talk to people who are either like going through their spiritual awakening, or clients who find their way to me and they don't quite know why they need to work with me, I've had this many times, and for those of you who have worked with me, you're probably smiling listening to this, which is this feeling of, I don't know why I need to work with you, Celine, I just do. I don't know why I'm drawn to you. I just know we need to do work together. I've had this so many times, and sometimes I smile. I'm always in the mystery of, okay, let's see, let's explore, let's figure out and discover why. And this feeling of, let's find out where this is going to take us, is one that I find people constantly overriding with their mind. And it's sad. I see this many times, just people knowing, having this felt sense in their body of, I know I'm meant for more. I know I'm meant to be more. I know that this is right for me. But then they won't take the trip. They won't do the investment. They won't make the change because they're too afraid of what they'll lose. They're too afraid of either losing money that they won't be able to get back. There's no such thing. They're afraid of losing a loved one. They're afraid of losing a relationship. They're afraid of losing a job. But whatever it is that you're afraid of losing at, one of the things that I learned, and through my mentorships and through also, my experience with just absorbing shamanic energy medicine and just learning from mentors who work deeply in that field, is that for us to create any kind of transition, we need to die to ourselves. Like, there needs to be, for there to be rebirth, there needs to be death. And a shaman is, from my understanding, and again, what I've learned from my mentors, is someone who is really able to die to themselves again and again and again and again and again and again and again, and to go through these really profound initiations for humanity. And although I don't think of myself that way in any way, shape, or form, I'm very inspired by the art of shamanism, and I'm really inspired by this philosophy of, when we want to make a big shift and change our lives for the better, we need to be willing to sit in the fear of what's going to die and what we're going to let go of, because that part is inevitable. And the more unwilling we are to let go, the more we're holding on and grasping and resisting, the more painful this transition is going to be. Because we are cyclical beings, there's no question that we are going to be going through several, that's cute, thousands, I don't know, millions of deaths and rebirths. With every breath we take, we die and we live again. You know, it's just this constant, things are going to need to release for them to come back in and grow and get better. And so when we are committed to our path of personal growth and evolution, it is absolutely inevitable that we will be facing the death and rebirth cycle. And so we can either fight it every time and dread death and just be scared all the time that it's coming, or we can learn to accept the cycle and start to actually move with it so that it moves more gracefully for us. So when I left New York, this was my first initiation in big death. Big death. Death of ego, death of circumstance, death of life as I knew it, death of me as I knew me. You know, going from a place where I was working in a fancy agency where I would drop the name and people would know. I studied at an Ivy League university. I would drop the name. People would know where I studied, or what they would make assumptions about who I am because of where I studied, or how smart I am, or how talented I am based on these names that I had under my belt and the clothes that I had, my full New York closet with all my leather, my Italian shoes, and these really nice things. And then all of a sudden I'm packing a carry-on that has like 5 t-shirts in it, you know, not nice t-shirts, really simple, 5 pair of pants, just this little bag, and nobody cares. Like, I leave US and nobody cares about my title. Nobody knows where I went to school. And now I don't even have a job to like latch my identity onto, because people are like, what do you do for work? I'm like, I don't know, I'm unemployed. Ooh, there we go. You know, who am I? What do I do? And when I left New York and I decided to do this social experiment, it was an experiment for humanity. I wanted to test if I left and leapt into my dream, would the world catch me? Would humanity catch me? That was what I truly wanted to discover for myself, and why I challenged myself to circumnavigate the globe by couch surfing, but only through human connection. I didn't want to go on couchsurfing.com. I didn't want to do it an artificial way. I literally wanted to use the power of human connection, to test the power of human connection, to see whether it was true that if I pursued my dream and if I put myself out there and decided to like find my purpose, would it be true that I would be supported? And I needed to have an embodied, felt experience of that for me to believe it. And again, I didn't know if I would be. I had no idea when I left with a one-way ticket. I just knew that I was willing to try. And I also knew that for me to have a sense of groundedness every day, there was 3 things that needed to happen. I needed to write, which eventually became me writing what is now my book. I needed to meet people, because I knew that the answers would come from other human beings. And I needed to travel, just keep moving, just keep seeing the world. So I left and I started to go through Europe. And throughout my journey, I ended up, it was a 9-month journey, technically, where I went to over 20 countries and I stayed in the homes of over 70 people, most of them who were actually strangers to me. But what's important to say is that it's a 9-month official journey where I exited New York and my feet landed back in America. But I actually continued this journey unofficially for 3 more years. So I actually was traveling for about 4 years this way. Just traveling in different places, in different countries, in the homes of different strangers, picking up is not the word, reclaiming pieces of myself, remembering who I was through the mirror of other people, through understanding myself by understanding people, understanding who I am by putting myself in these situations and places and spaces with people all over the world, and recollecting, reassembling myself and who I am and what I love and what I'm really here to do over the course of these years. And so when I look back or people ask me about it, I can say, the short, catchy, punchy version is that I went on this journey and I stepped onto the path of my soul's purpose. I was not on that path. I was on the path of the hamster wheel that we call the matrix, of this just roundabout of just doing, and basically cycling through life with no meaning or purpose or connection to my soul. And when I had this big break, the scariest freaking decision of my life, to leave it all behind, to do something different, it was not easy to do. But I decided to do it, and I summoned the courage to choose differently. And then I got on that path, and I started to walk one foot in front of the other, even though I had no freaking idea where I was going. What I didn't know then, that I know now, is that the steps that I was taking were the very first steps on the path of my soul's purpose, my soul's destiny. And even though I have no idea, I'm still walking. I'm going to be walking this path until the day that my soul leaves this physical plane. And I don't know all the places and spaces that this path is going to take me. I just know that I'm committed to this path. And whenever I'm not on this path, my work is to get back on this path. And why would I walk this path? Because it is the most joyous path to walk. It is the most fulfilling path to walk. It is the most satisfying, loving, like the closest that I can feel to oneness. Before we live in duality. We live in a world of opposites. We live in a world of dual. And every single human being at our core essence, at our essence, our deepest desire is to come back into oneness. It's to come back to source, love. That's what every single one of us really, everything, like, oh, I want freedom. I want this in my life. I want a house. I want money. I want a friend. I want a partner. Like everything we want, and you just keep chunking. It just keeps coming back to oneness, which is experienced as bliss, ecstasy, love. It's got many names. And when we are separated from that, it hurts. It's like the pain of being human. It freaking hurts to not be in love. And we find all these screwed up ways to try to experience love, to, codependent relating, just having these 5-second rub and tug orgasms so that we can have like a few seconds of that oneness bliss experience, trying to get our needs met through our business, trying to get our needs met through pets or people, or just like consistently looking outside of us for these momentary dopamine releases of, oh, okay, I'm whole again, and then it's gone within seconds. It's not sustainable because it's not internally sourced. And so that is why I walk the path of my soul purpose. That's why I'm choosing this path, because it's the only way that I have experienced a more sustainable, lasting connection to myself and within myself, source. And it's the only way, it's the most sustainable way that I can hold it in time without it being, an orgasm that lasts a few seconds, or a dopamine hit from an Instagram feed, or a sugar high from something that's, emotionally placating me temporarily, but then goes away within seconds. So it's the most sustainable thing. And as I was walking these first steps of the journey, maybe there's some of you that I've had this feedback to me, which is, Celine, you articulate things so well. You explain things so well in a way that I wish I had the words for. And the reason why I have the words for it is not only because I've experienced it, but because I brought it through my body. I brought it through my system. And as I'm speaking it from my heart, because I've been there. I'm there. I go there frequently. And I understand this deep longing and desire for us to be on purpose and in alignment to our soul, because it's literally just this. It was the driver for my first initial awakening, and it's the driver for me anytime that I get lost or anytime I stray from my path. And as I was walking these first couple of steps, I had to listen. And I had to listen to myself and use my compass, which was travel, meet people, and write, as a way for me to stay focused on what it is that I wanted to create during this journey. And so as I started to travel the world and land in these different places on the planet, and literally go to the house, apartment, sometimes shack of people I had never met in my life, was an extremely vulnerable experience, because not only did I feel lost, what do? I don't have a job. Where's my next paycheck coming from? I don't know anyone here. I've never been in this place. Like, really, what do I do? And now, not only did I feel completely freaking lost and in shambles within myself, but I now also had the added uncertain variable of going into the home of someone I never met before. I wouldn't know who they were. I didn't know how they would treat me. All I knew is that it was a friend of a friend or a friend of a friend's friend. There was a connection somehow, and that was the one thin string of safety that I had to hold on to. Is, okay, well, this person knows this person, so clearly I should be okay, right? And with that really thin string of safety, I would walk into a complete stranger's home, and my mission was to get to know that person, to just learn who they were. And by me learning who they were, I would literally sit down with these people and I would interview them. I have like a 200-page Word document of 50 plus people that I interviewed to ask them about, who are you? Like, what is it that you desire in your life? If you could be doing any in your life, what would it be? What truly matters to you in life? How do you define love? How do you define friendship? And asking them the sequence of questions to understand how they perceived the world and how they felt in their life and what they desired in their life. And it was really interesting because by interviewing all of these people, I learned quite a few very important things. And the most important thing that I learned, that I carry with me and will carry with me forever, is that every single one of us has a deep desire to experience love. And every single one of us desires to experience, joy and bliss and beauty. And unfortunately, most people don't know how and don't have the pathway because of the ways that most of us have grown up in mainstream society and the way mainstream society has been structured to separate us from that. It's really been difficult to access the joy and ease and beauty that is our birthright. And people create all these character armors and these masks and these lives that are so intricate and elaborate and complicated to distract themselves from not having that or not being there yet. And I realized that because when I left everything behind in New York and I was just traveling like in a little suitcase, traveling the world, I just had me and like some clothes and people, and I never experienced how joyful and simple and beautiful life can be when you don't have anything, no titles, no attachments. It was the closest I've gotten to that. And I know that there's some people who have gone way more extreme, like go live in the mountains for, a year, 10 years, like as monks. I don't think that's in my line. For now, it doesn't appeal to me. But the closest way that I was able to experience that is just letting go of all of this and realizing, oh my God, just like sitting in the living rooms of human beings, like from all kinds of walks of life, all kinds of different cultures, just talking to them about their dreams and their desires and what it is that they wanted to create with their life. And just realizing there's so much purity and so much simplicity in what it is that we truly want, which is to experience love, to be loved, and to like have a beautiful life. And so many people are feeling so detached from it, and they feel like it's so far away from them that the only way to cope with the pain of that separation is to numb it with distractions, to numb it with sex, drugs, alcohol, technology, whatever you want to call it. There's just so many different distractions that you can use nowadays for you to not feel that, instead of actually feeling the pain of your own separation from your heart's like desires, and feeling that pain, accepting that pain, coming into communion to that pain, and then understanding that yes, you can feel the pain and it's not too late. There's always time, and you can take those first steps. I took those first steps when I was 25. I know people who took them when they were 14. I know people who took them when they were in their 50s. Ideally, we start sooner than later, but it's never too late. And me knowing that and experiencing that and witnessing the grief and the sadness of people who were still waiting, they're still too scared to take those steps because they didn't know what was on the other side. It was too scary to die. It was too scary to let go of something. And so they would not take the steps because of that fear. The fear of facing the unknown was stronger than the fear of dying. And that, I've also witnessed people who figured it out. Some of them very simple people, very, very simple lives, who figured it out that at the end of the day, it's all about the smile and spending time with my family and enjoying my life and enjoying what I have now, instead of waiting for the day when I have created this thing outside of me. The day that I have a house, the day that I have a successful business, the day that I make a certain amount of money, then I can be happy. That's such an illusion. It is such an illusion, because I have sat in the homes of very wealthy, very privileged people who all they did was complain about their life. And there's no judgment there. We're all on our own path. But of course, if you're complaining about your life, it doesn't matter what kind of things you have in your life. You're miserable. You're not happy. And I've sat in the cots on the floor in a hut of people who all they have is a smile on their face, and they communicate, even if they don't speak the language, they communicate with you with a glint of joy in their eyes that is just a pure transmission in and of itself. And having this expansive exposure to these different kind of humans all over the world, it really taught me something about humanity and the ways that life and joyfulness and being in your purpose can be so simple. Like, your purpose doesn't have to be this long, intricate thing where you need to impact 1 million people and make, a certain million amount of dollars and own this much property for you to have a soul's purpose. Like, your soul purpose can literally be to like live in a cozy home with your family and raise, a beautiful child and raise a child with love, or to be in love, or to live in the mountains and live a peaceful and calm life. Like, not everyone's purpose is the same. And I think we put a lot of pressure on ourselves to find our life's purpose. But number one, it's not a straight answer. It's more, at least in my experience, it's an unfolding. It's a path that you're walking, that you're either walking the path or you're not walking the path. And that's how you know if you're on soul purpose. It's like, are you on the path? Or are you not on the path? And it's going to be a felt yes or no. Like, you can feel it in your heart. You can feel in your heart, am I in my heart's path? You can feel it. It's going to be like, not really. Or it's going to be like, yeah, actually I am. And what can I do next? And so people stress themselves out looking for this like big, grandiose answer of what a soul purpose is. But I don't think it's like you could summarize it for now, but know that it's fluid. It's going to change. Like, your soul purpose, if you try to summarize it in a sentence today, might be a completely different sentence in a year from now. And again, totally fine, because it's not about the sentence or summarizing in that way. It's about the felt experience of, are you feeling like you're walking the next step on the path or not? And a lot of people are not doing that because they're scared. And that's fair enough, but what are you really scared of? And it's important to get clear on that. Your life depends on it. Are you scared of stepping into the unknown? Are you scared of dying to yourself? What are you actually scared of that is keeping you from taking the next step into what you can feel in your body, in your intuition, is actually right for you? Because you can create a lot of stories about why you can't. You can create stories about how you don't have time, you don't have money, you don't have the resources, you're too busy doing this, you have these things going on. And can you be okay with recognizing that if you know that next step is right for you, if your body's telling you it's a very felt feeling, then everything else is an excuse. And if you're not having that felt feeling, then your work is getting reconnected to your intuition and feeling yourself and feeling and listening, because that tiny, tiny whisper that is telling you, like, this is what I need to do, this is where I need to be. I know you felt it somewhere in your life, but that tiny whisper, if you continue to ignore it, will get fainter and fainter and fainter. So the remedy to that is you got to start listening to that whisper in your intuition. That little voice from within, you got to start listening to it, because the more you listen to it, the more you give it voice, the more you give it your consciousness, your attention, the more clearly you are going to be able to hear it. And that little tiny faint voice that back then was like, maybe you should just leave, maybe you should go travel, maybe try something new. Such a faint voice, that same voice today is freaking as loud as my physical voice now. Because I have listened to that voice so many times over, that I trust that voice like no other. And every time that voice is directing me, I know it's directing me towards my next step in my soul destiny. And I am going to listen, even if I'm scared shitless of the ways that I might die to myself, of what I might lose, of what might happen if I listen to myself. Why? Because I've expanded my capacity to be with that fear and to walk through those coals, those hot, freaking fiery coals of doubt and insecurity and fear. It's not about avoiding that initiation. It's about learning how to walk through that initiation and hold your head up high and trust yourself and trust that whatever challenge comes your way, you are going to know how to meet it. And there's no freaking way you can plan for it in advance. It's not possible. Your mind doesn't go there. It can't go there because your mind doesn't go into the unknown, because that is the mystery. That is the mystery of life. It is your connection to your deeper self. It's your connection to God. Your mind can't compute your destiny like that. Your mind is a tool that your soul can inform to create physical reality with. It's a tool that you can use to take your ideas, to take your desires, to take things from the unseen realms, from the ethereal realms, and land them into physical reality. But your mind is not what's going to land you in your soul's destiny. It's not what's going to predict what's coming next. It's not what's going to tell you. It's not going to give you a report. It can't give you a report what's going to be on the other side. And if it's giving you a report, you're limiting yourself. You got to be willing to step into the mystery. You got to be willing to trust yourself in your core, to know that as long as you're walking every step, and you can say, hand on your heart, like, this step is my heart. This step is my heart. This step is with my heart. This step is with my heart. Can you trust that as long as you're taking every step consciously like that, you're inevitably going to end up where your mind cannot even fathom, because it is so much more grand. It is so much better. It is so much more than anything you could have ever imagined. And I know this to be true, and you can hear the passion in my voice, because it's happened over and over and over again. And that trip, the couch surfing journey around the world, was the biggest one for me, because it was the one where I was like, least prepared. I didn't know what the hell was going on, because now when I'm presented with these situations in my life again where I need to die to myself again, where I need to go into another initiation again, it's less scary. It's less big. It feels less big. It feels less dramatic. It feels less like grandiose, because I now know, oh, here we go again. Here's the next mystery. What's going to come up now? And so by walking that path, traveling around the world and giving myself the space and the opportunity to remember who I was and to experience myself in a completely different way that I never experienced myself before, lo and behold, I discovered some new things. And when you do things differently, you cannot, when you don't change the way you are or your circumstances, your environment, the way you're acting, you can't expect anything in the future to change, because you're copying and pasting your past into your future. To experience change, you got to walk into the mystery. You got to walk into the unknown. And when I did that, oh my God, what I received was so much grander, because my mind was like, oh, I'm going to take a 1-year sabbatical. And then I guess I'll go back to like maybe in a city in Europe. I'll go move to a city in Europe and I'll get a job that's more higher paying, and maybe I'll get a promotion or something in a slightly different industry. Like that's what my mind could compute at the time. What I didn't realize is that I was walking a path of opening up a career and a business that was in alignment to my soul service. What I didn't know back then, as I left New York with, $10,000 in my bank account that was supposed to last me for a year, and not really any ways to, no income plan and no return plan, just no plan. And I didn't realize that less than a year later, I would have been a business owner. I would have started a business. I wouldn't have realized that 5 years from that, 7 years from that, I would be running a highly successful coaching business where I'm supporting people with transforming their life in profound ways, with elevating their life and their business to be a match to their soul service, of taking their deepest heart desires and translating them into a life and a business that lights them up, that is in alignment to their soul, to their purpose, to their calling. I couldn't have fathomed that. I couldn't have fathomed that I would have created a life where I live in Bali for half of the year and then I travel the world to my heart's desire the other half of the year, that I would be flying business class around the world, that I would be meeting some of the most interesting humans on the planet, that I would be interviewing the most interesting humans on the planet, that I would have friends all over the world, that I would have this channel that I could communicate with and hopefully support more people around the world through just sharing my story, just being authentically myself, sitting in front of a camera, talking without a plan, without an outline, and just speaking from my heart and knowing that this is going to touch people. Perhaps this has touched you. None of this could have made possible if 7 years ago I hadn't made the decision that I was going to take a step forward towards what I felt was right, even though everything mentally, logically made no sense. It was not a financially savvy decision. It was not a locationally savvy decision. It was not a decision that was intelligent for my safety as a woman traveling the world on my own, sleeping in the houses of strangers. There was no guarantee. Many people told me I was crazy. Many people told me that the risks that I was taking were out of line. Many people questioned me, made fun of me, told me that what I was doing was just insane and irresponsible and irrational. I went ahead and did it anyway. And what that opened up for me was a pathway. It was the steps that I took that then later on led me into launching my career and designing a lifestyle that is in alignment to who I am. And this lifestyle and the business that I've created and the way that this business supports other people and then nourishes me, both from a soul service standpoint, a financial standpoint, just a satisfaction standpoint, a visibility standpoint, because of course there's ego gratification as well, and knowing that you're all watching this and maybe you're going to like it, maybe you're going to comment. I'm not going to sit here and lie and tell you that my ego's not in it and my ego's not like, ooh, that's fun. Oh my God, I'm so glad somebody made a comment, right? This is soul driven. And of course, like the ego, the personality is also there being like, woohoo, how exciting, you know? I couldn't have fathomed any of this. And it's happened again. This is just the story about the couch surfing in 2016 is just the biggest bang of it. But in the 7 years since then, oh my God, it's been a serious journey. And in the past 3 years even, I've talked about this in other podcast episodes, I've gone through such a massive dark night of the soul and just ego death and rebuilding. I mean, you can literally, my face doesn't look the same that it did 3 years. If you look at a photo of me 3 years ago, you won't recognize me because I literally shape-shifted from the amount of shedding and deconditioning and letting go and becoming that I have been focusing on. And I'm still not done. And I'm not going to be done anytime in this lifetime. It's a process. But the reason why I wanted to share this with you is because I know that if you're drawn to this work, if you're drawn to my podcast, heck, even if it's just this episode, maybe you've never even heard me before until now, I trust that your soul called you to receive this message for you to remember that you are worthy. You are worthy. And you are worthy of creating a life that flourishes within you, that lights you up, that's beautiful and full of love and blissful and joyful. And I just happen to call this your soul purpose. I believe that there's a unique gift that you have to bring to the world. There's a unique way of living that life, because if we all lived a blissful, loving, joyful life the same exact way, that'd be kind of boring. That wouldn't be that fun. We each have our own definition of that, our own unique definition. What is a life that's full of love and blissful and joyful for me is going to manifest in the physical realm differently than it does for you. But both of us are still operating from that like frequency of just being in fulfillment and joy and bliss and pleasure. It just looks differently because my personality and my unique soul essence is different. It's unique from yours. But whatever that looks like for you, are you allowing yourself to have it? Whatever that looks like for you, have you given yourself permission to even think about what it looks like for you? Because that might be your first step. Have you actually sat and allowed yourself to dream and connect to what that beautiful life looks like for you? And if you haven't, that's your first step. If you have, then what's in between you and that life right now? Because my guess is that change needs to happen for you to bridge that gap. And the faster you want to bridge the gap, the bigger the change and the transformation. And it doesn't always have to be scary and violent and messy. It doesn't always have to be that way. I don't believe it always needs to be that way. But I have found that if you want it to be that way, if you need to have that experience, you will attract that experience, but you can also have it be graceful. But it will be a change. And so that uncertainty, that unknown is definitely inevitably going to be there. How you engage with it, how you interface with it, which is whether you're really scared of it or you're welcoming it with open arms, is going to determine the quality of your experience. And it's all perfect either way. But it's worth asking, what is getting in the way? And the next thing I want to, leave you with is, are you willing to make a change? And are you willing to take the next steps? Ask yourself that. And if you are willing to take the next steps, then what are the next steps that you need to walk? And what is your commitment for you to be on your path? And what happens when you stray? How do you come back to yourself? So these are really big questions that I want to leave you with. And, these are questions that when I'm working with my clients, we really dive deeper into. And I almost didn't want to ask you these questions because I know that I may leave you in this podcast and you're just percolating these really big questions, but I wanted to give them to you because it's worth journaling about, and either on your own time or if you have mentorship or a therapist or any kind of facilitators in your life, it's something you can reflect with them as well. But it's really important because the only way that we are going to be walking the path of heart towards our soul destiny is by walking the path of heart towards our soul destiny. It's really that simple. It just means taking the steps. So whatever your steps look like today, the invitation is, or my prayer for you rather, is go and take them. It's worth it. It's really freaking worth it. And I can tell you that from having gone through this initiation many, many times and knowing in my freaking bones that it's worth it. And so if you don't believe in yourself, you can borrow my belief, because I have tons, and I can throw some your way for sure. Yeah. So that is today's episode. And for those of you who are feeling really called towards this work, what I love to share with you is that I do have programs that support this work and that create a container for you to be able to be held and supported through this transition. And so the first one is, I have a beautiful container called The Journey. It is a 12-month all-access pass to all of my self-led programs, courses, meditations, trainings, guest trainings, essentially everything I've ever created and will create in the next 12 months, you get to have access to. Plus, you also have quarterly live Q&As with me where you can come in and ask me your questions. So what I really love about The Journey is that it is a program, a container that is meant to support you as you take the journey home in your personal and professional life, which looks like, in personal, it looks like there's a course on helping you get reconnected to your soul, on helping you reconnect to your soul essence. There are courses on how to help you rewrite your story in your subconscious mind of who you are and who you can become, and also how you can create your brand story and put it out in the world so that it's supporting your business and it's supporting your mission in a way that is going to increase your impact, your influence, your income. There is a course in there on life design and how you can actually design your life intentionally to be in accordance to your soul purpose. There's a course on how to heal your relationship with money, on how to create premium offers in your business that sell. There are strategy masterclasses in there on how you can take an idea for a product or an offer that you have and essentially turn it into a paid evergreen product. There are meditations to get you reconnected to your soul essence. So it is a treasure chest of courses, trainings, and programs that you can dive into to support you in your journey towards becoming more of who you are and also growing that conscious, thriving, soul-led business. So if that's something that you are interested in, you can find more information in the show notes. And also, I have a live group program that is coming up soon, which you can also find more information on in the show notes, which is called Business by Soul. And it is all about teaching you how to create and grow a thriving, prosperous, soul-led business where you are being supported by your business in your soul service. So you get to be authentically yourself in your unique soul expression, be of service, and be highly compensated for it, as well as build a business model that's going to change the lives of a lot of people. So if that's something you're interested in, you can also take a look in the show notes. And as always, anything I've shared today that has inspired you, please feel free to take a screenshot and tag me on Instagram. Share with me what you really loved about it. And if you really, really love this episode or any other episodes I've shared, we would so appreciate a 5-star review on the podcast channels or the Apple podcast. And that's what it's called. So that would be greatly appreciated, as well as it helps other people be able to access this content and put it out there in a bigger way. So thank you so much for joining me today. And I hope that today was supportive to your journey, and see you on the internets.
Thank you, beautiful humans, for tuning into today's episode of It's Not What You Think. If you loved what you received today, make sure to subscribe so that you don't miss out on future episodes, and leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, as it helps us reach even more amazing listeners like you. If we aren't already connected on social media, come receive even more tips and inspiration by following me on Instagram at Celine DaCosta, or visiting my website at CelineDaCosta.com. After listening to this episode, I invite you to take a few moments to reflect. What stood out to you? What were your key takeaways or breakthroughs? And if there was one action step you could take from this, what would it be? Thank you again for joining me on this journey. I'm sending you so much love, and I can't wait to connect in the next episode. Until then, keep sharing your unique gifts and living out your most magical life.